So currently we are seeing a kind of a temporary breather, not so much a real ceasefire, but a breather where there's an agreement of a 10-point plan between Iran and the US. Now, let's be very clear here. This is very temporary. This is this is basic. It's not real ceasefire because upon the agreement of this agreement, upon agreement of this agreement, upon agreement of this 10-point plan, this so-called ceasefire, Israel, sounded the alarms in their country, the sirens, and in a kind of a way to indicate that Iran have begun, bombing Israel, which of course it is part of this duplicitous nature of Israeli foreign policy to simply, you know, false flag operations, lies, deception are kind of part of their game plan. So when an agreement is made with Israel, a ceasefire is made with Israel, they will still continue irrespective because they use the pretense of liberal democracy. They use the pretense of justice. You use the pretense of an agreement or a ceasefire as a way to make themselves out to be morally agreeable, but actually it's all facade. It's all it's a way for them to wash themselves of any kind of spotlight on them, but still going ahead with the kind of immorality, the bombardment of whatever nation is at the receiving end of Israel. That's very clear. So there's no real ceasefire, but let's say there is between US and Iran, there is some sort of temporary breather. Yeah. Now, here's a crazy thing that I've noticed throughout the whole thing, the whole affair between this bombing campaign between the US and Iran. The the right wing, or whatever you call it, MAGA, the Christian nationalists in America, for the most part, the vast majority of them, and I'm not talking about Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, who are very much a minority in that kind of that sphere. But the vast majority of them, they're very much gung ho about bombing Iran. This includes people in the US, I mean UK as well. The pro reform, the Tommy Robinson types, the Nigel Farage supporters. They all an agreement that Iran needs to be sent to the Stone Ages. They're very much, frothing at the mouth with regards to Trump's threats of ending Iranian civilization, which essentially means bombing them in a genocidal way. Even if you just destroy, your intention is to destroy the civilian infrastructure, this includes hospitals, this includes railways, this includes the necessary, bridges that people need to function as a society, and these are essential for maintaining the survival of a population. Ambulances need roads to be free of debris in order for them to save people. You need clear railways in order for the shipment or the delivery of medicine. So quite clearly, it's a genocidal, has a genocidal effect. And the strategists in America, in the UK, the right wing, they know what's going on here. What's interesting here is that they were much gung ho about bombing Iran, and at the same time, they are also gung ho about stopping immigration, both illegal and legal immigration, from countries like Iran, which is quite, it's a kind of a contradiction in terms, because the reason why people move to countries in Europe, in the US, illegally or legally, is because opportunities are, become sparse in their own country, or they see more opportunity in countries outside. So when you place sanctions on, on countries like Iran, when you place sanctions on a whole host of countries that are, opposition to US foreign policy, it just leads to a domino effect where you have an exodus of people who may not necessarily be, sympathetic to the government that you are opposing in the country that you're bombing. And so, but it still increases the immigration to your country. And this is why, it's very clear to me that if an alien from an outside world came to see the species that we call Homo sapien, and they were to study nationalism or right wingism or MAGA, they'd realize at best it's an incomplete and isolationist ideology, but at worst it's completely delusional. Because and actually, let's forget about it. Even at its best, it's still like, it's still too based on fixation on a part rather than the whole, and something that's based on reality, based on truth, and based on something that's objective, needs to include the totality of what is happening. It needs to be a holistic ideology. Otherwise it's incomplete, and if something is incomplete, then it's not based in reality. So the right wing believes that bombing of a country is it's all fine, genocide is fine, but that creates a whole host of issues with regards to the exodus of people and the increase of illegal immigration or legal immigration. So therefore, this right wing ideology of us versus them leads to a situation where they will see more of them, and this is the reason why it's not even worth considering as something as a honest ideology. It's an honest way of thinking about the world. In fact, throughout time, I believe what do we consider the right wing or conservatism? Huge part of it is based on the how the elites want you to conform to their way of thinking. And when I'm talking about elites, the people who own the wealth in the country, wealth and power in the country, they want you to conform to their blueprint so as to kind of persuade you morally, ethically, to become their soldiers and to defend their interests rather than your interests. Because the elites, they live in their own, their own isolated spheres. They don't not necessarily at the receiving end of a increase of immigration. I'm not here to say that immigration is necessarily a bad thing either. In fact, I see immigration as a positive. Any kind of improvement, or rather, any kind of diversity, any kind of whether it's diversity of thinking, diversity of people, diversity of culture, it adds to the creative collective consciousness, and it adds more influences, more interesting things about life, but also allows us to see life in its totality. And the moment you become more puritanical, more like isolationist, the more you see reality from a very limited scope. And if you see reality from a limited scope, it's not the totality of reality. It's not reality. It's more like it's a facade. It's a way of conforming rather than seeing reality as it is. But it's really interesting that the right wing and doesn't really consider the effects of their own ideology, and this includes the centrists too, who like to play the game of this, both sides are not completely right, but the so-called centrists are really just right-wingers in disguise, because they themselves do not see the moral contradictions within the right wing. It's only when you consider justice, freedom, when you consider justice and freedom as important traits to have, then everything that the right stands for falls apart. And if you dilly-dally and if you don't consider that as a huge argument against the right wing, then you are simply seesawing between you know, what is wrong and what is confused by the centrists. The centrists also want to see themselves as morally superior to both the left and right, so they will sit on a fence and not make any, proclamations or any clear indications with regards to their morality, which in the end gives more power to the right wing, because the right wing is essentially the tool that is used by the elites who are already in power. So the centrists are there to keep the right wing, the elites, in power, because they have no real argument against them, apart from just simply saying that, what you're doing might be extreme. But they're wrong in the first place. It's not just that they're extreme. They were wrong in the first place because their whole ideology is based on isolationism, and based on seeing reality from a limited scope, limited worldview. And not only limited, but also you are shooting yourself in the foot. Even if you believe in whatever your racist ideals are, you will be at the receiving end of greater numbers of immigration, of illegal and illegal, by the actions of your right-wing ideology. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment and subscribe. That'd be very much appreciated. Thank you.